From the past, he knew it would.
First thing I'd like to mention is my wife, Rhian Harcombe. Her uncle, great uncle, died at Metz Woods 100 years ago today. His name was Bethel Harcombe. He served with the 15th Battalion Welsh Regiment. His service number was 21769. He fought at Metz Wood. This was a few days into the Battle of the Somme. He died on the 10th of July 1916. His body was never found. He is remembered on the Theopole Memorial. Secondly, is my grandfather was Frederick Bishop. He's a sapper with the Royal Engineers. Signal 62001. And these are some extracts taken from his diary, which he kept. I'm not in. I don't have the diary myself. All I've got is a copy of it. And last night I took some of these things from that diary. Frederick Bishop joined for the war on the 20th of August 1914 with the South Wales Borderers, and after training transferred to the Royal Engineers. The diary commences on the 9th of September 1915, and previous details are at this moment unknown. Fred Bishop at this time had been stationed out in Regis, Bedfordshire for 4 months, and in between training had visited many of the towns, hamlets in the area. During the course of the training on cable work, his wife Marion visited and stayed for 8 weeks. On the 2nd September, he returned home for his final leave and returned to Datey on the 8th. During the training, he visited London for the first time, riding through the streets of Paddington to Euston Road, then walked to the King's Cross. He had tea and visited the Euston Playhouse, where he watched Jade Johnson and his wife. On that day, the 8th of September, London suffered one of its worst air attacks from the Zeppelin L-13, causing over £500,000 worth of damage. Now stationed at Hitchin and departed for embarkation to a great send-off, served out with 50 rounds of ammunition at 9:30 a.m. en route via London, and arrived at the rest camp at St Bodo, Cornwall. 4th of October, marched through the Royal Naval Dockyard and boarded SS Magnetic. This was the boat that brought back Dr. Crippen back to England from Canada, where he was hung for murder. It was a fine boat with every convenience, and we set sail at 1:25 on the 5th of October for the Near East. En route we passed many ships, including the Royal George, sister ship to the Royal Edward, having just returned from the Dandels. Clear of land, we joined by 2 other transporters and 2 destroyers. We were drilled for any attacks with life belts, allotted to boat 2 if anything should happen. 6th of October, second day of sailing. Today's escort left us off at Lusant. Last night sighted transport off starboard, and today found it was a ship that brought out the 4th South Wales Borderers to the Dardanelles. For several days nothing of importance happened. Seen flying fish, porpoise on Friday. Also had inoculations against cholera. Regiments aboard the SS Magnetic were the Royal Engineers, Royal Ordnance Corps, the Army Service Corps, the Royal Garrison Artillery, the Royal Field Artillery, the Royal Scots. Also, there's Australian Infantry, the 16th, Australian Royal Army Medical Corps, and the New Zealand Rifles. Passed through the Straits of Gibraltar at 8 p.m. on the 8th of October. It was dark, but you could discern the North African coast for the next few days. We passed many towns lit up at night and rocky mountainous coastline by day. Wales followed sailing ships and patrol boats inquiring about our destination. On the 11th at noon, entered the Grand Harbour of Malta. The officers were allowed ashore, but not the men. the ship was refueled and 150 men came aboard bound for the Dardanelles, mostly men that had been wounded before. It's noted that there are men aboard that have been in the army for only 3 weeks and haven't had any musketry training, armed with old L.E. Metford rifles and Snyders. 14th of October entered the Aegean Sea. Rather rough passage. Sighted a submarine on the starboard bow. It was fired at by the Australians. Spent night on deck with life belts. No smoking allowed on deck. Arrived at the harbour of Lemnos of the Dardanelles at 15th of October, 4:30 p.m. 19th of October, the Greek army moved up to the frontier. There was a fine view from the hill overlooking the harbour and the camps. The French division on one side have a blue uniform, the Greeks all in khaki. Have heard that we leave for Lemnos soon as Greece remains neutral. Left Salonika at 5 p.m. for Lemnos. Lots of French and British warboats in the harbour. Passed HMS Lord Nelson. Landed at the island of Lemnos and marched up to the camp. Had orders to proceed to Anzac at H5 Wednesday 3rd of November. Left Lemnos, boarded the HMS Newmarket, left harbour for Anzac alongside SS Aragon, the base flagship. Sailed up to the Dardanelles, sighted Cape Helles on starboard bow, a strong light gear running from Turkish fort, and watched shrapnel bursting over land. After disembarking, walked up to the signal office. All of this hill is dugouts. Slept in the open this evening. A ship sunk in the bay. Noted the troops here are the AFI, Gurkhas, Indians and British troops. This is the 4th of November 1915, my first day on Gallipoli Peninsula. 5th of November, made my own dugout on the hill, shrapnel bursting on the beach. One passed over our heads, whistling as it passed and burst in the valley about 200 yards away. Heavy bombardment on at Salva Bay. Large village on fire by our own guns. Sunday work as usual, no different to any other day. Bombardment continues. Fags handed out, 2 men killed by shrapnel, fired by Beachley Bill, Turkish battery. 6th of November, bombardment still going broadside, fired by HMS Cornwall. 9th of November, calm in the morning. In the afternoon, some cruisers bombarded the Turkish camp while Beachley Bill continues to cause havoc. Visited W6 signal office this morning. It had been damaged by small fire, started repair work on the way down. Passed through deep cut roads through sand. In one of these, noticed a poor fellow buried in his boots and clothes, also bones protruding. Passed a man called Griegson, who was in the smash. His boots is in a smash yesterday, gone off his head a bit and racing towards the beach. 14th of November, nothing much to report. Lord Kitchener visited yesterday. Large attack on the right flank tonight, trying to take Hill 60 and Walker's Ridge. Hill 60 is reported to have been blown up. A heavy gale and sandstorms very nearly blinded us last night with lightning. 18th, seen Turkish prisoners being interviewed by officers. On the 20th, received first letter and paper from home. Sunday 21st, very cold, bitter in fact. No bread issued for the last 2 days. Monday the 22nd, still extremely cold, a few shrapnel bursts. Tuesday the 23rd to Monday the 29th, have been very poorly with influenza and catarrh, and the doctor's orders for milk diet. Feel very weak. A terrible night on Saturday. Rain, lightning, very vivid thunder, very heavy. Snow, 28th, all day long. Blizzard conditions. At night, freezing. Served out with warm clothing and shifted into our new dugouts, 20 foot long with bunk beds. Very comfortable. Bad all week. Watched the bombardment of Walker's Ridge. Quite a sight to see the earth fly in where the shells dropped only 500 yards away. Chap called Gascoigne killed by shot on Wednesday. 6th of December, very heavy bombardment from the Turks of 8-inch shells. Killed 6 men at the station. seen the damage all over the place, seen men carried away, flesh, blood everywhere, the most awful sight I have witnessed. Out here, some of them terrible agonies, others with limbs missing. Monday the 13th, walk through Saps to Australian Valley. Watch every bombardment over trenches, high explosive shells directed to Rhondda Valley, Bug Valley, etc. Came back, was told to get ready to leave the peninsula, board the ship with stores and troops. Australian Gurkhas left a few behind to maintain wires and all my kit and landed at Madras. Walked for miles from one camp to the next, eventually finding sleep with the Australians in a tent by the canteen. The 16th proceeded to Madras east, marched 4 miles through Greek villages and crossed on a ferry of sorts, driven by a gas engine. Arrived in detail at 5:30 and third visit to the island of Lemos, and then on to Madras West Peninsula camp, 24th of December, fatigue, and under orders to proceed to Cairo, December 25th, Christmas Day. Very quiet. Monday, June the 12th, off south coast of France, landed at Marseille, June the 13th, led that night by train for North France. Mr. Bishop, Frederick Bishop, was demobbed in June of 1919 and very rarely spoke or written about his experiences in North of France. Some other little snippets really after the war, because there is a period after the war, and my mother used to tell us many stories. However, this had to be one of the best of them all. Cheesy and the Pond Winter, 1935, by Joan Bishop. Cheesy's real name, George Power, was such a naughty, mischievous little boy. He, along with my brother, Doug Bishop, had been sent to Sunday school. Doug was wearing a new suit with strict instructions not to damage or get it dirty under any circumstances. Doug came home about 4 p.m. He was soaking wet from top to toe. Mum started to shout at him and was laying into him. Crying and screaming, there was no let off for him, with his Sunday best ruined. I stood and looked at my father. He was very deaf from the war and the industry, snoozing away in his chair, so obvious from the hideous noise Doug was making along with my very uncompromising mother. For all my wisdom of 15 years, I piped up, "Why don't you ask him how he got wet, Mum?" Mum stopped yelling, looking at me sternly, as if to say, "How dare you?" Then turned to Doug and said, "Well then, how did you get wet?" With a sobbing voice, Doug replied, "We were playing on the ice and the ice broke and Cheesy went into the water. I laid on the ice and pulled him out and the ice broke under me." Mum asked Doug, "Where's Cheesy now?" Doug replied, "He's still in the water." "Oh my God, he was only little. He would surely drown." "Dad, Dad," I cried, shaking my father by the arm. He opened his bleary eyes, stared at me, and that's what the problem was. Shouting and mouthing my words, I said, "Cheesy's in the pond." My father jumped out of his chair and out through the doors he went, not bothering to put a coat on this ice-cold Sunday. I followed closely behind him, and up and over the bridge alongside the houses he marched, and there in front of us was the old pond. Well, actually, it was a disused quarry from the brickworks and the vitriol works that used to be in that area. It was interspersed here and there with islands. On the banks stood a crowd of children, along with the Sunday school teachers, among others, and there out in the pond stood on the little island was Cheesy, crying, "Save me, save me, save me." Soaking wet, shivering from the cold, with blood running down his legs, where he had cut his bony knees on the ice. My father, looking at the menfolk, asked why in God's name they hadn't saved him. "But we have our Sunday best clothes on, Mr. Bishop," they shouted. And my father shouted back too, out the bloody way then, and into the freezing water he strode, slipping and sliding up to his waist as he headed for little Cheesy, who was still on the island's arms stretched out, crying, "Save me, Mr. Bishop, save me." My father reached him and clutched him in his arms and carried him to safety. I remember thinking how proud I was of my father and thinking those young men just, wow, stood and watched and did nothing. The stadium is now on the strip where the ponds were, and where Mam used to tell the story. The see me, Mr. Bishop, was obviously greatly exaggerated, bless her. And last one? Yes, okay?
Yeah.
When my grandfather eventually passed away, and he lived in one of the prefabricated houses, which are all long gone, are only built temporarily after the war to house the people. He was profoundly deaf, and he had an old hearing aid, which he reckoned, used to tell me, was a German radio, which he snaffled when his exploits in the war. I know now that it wasn't. But this is called Yesterday's Ghost. Recalling my grandfather as he sat in the corridor with his frail bone round his shoulders, he looked like the wings of some fallen angel sticking up from his torn feathered torso. Often he would sit and gaze at the clock that stood there, lost in the repetition from a swinging pendulum that kept immaculate time with the start and end of each day. From another time he had fought in the First World War, a veteran of the Near East. He held in his hands pictures of comrades perched high on the backs of camels, the pyramids majestically posing for those valiant soldiers. Some of these had fallen before their time, some had come home back broken, never to be repaired, while others had drifted away in the silence of tired guns. He tells stories when I was a boy, not horrific tales of blood and death, but of friendship and companionship and warm summer sunsets that greet the end of battle days. He was of a different age, stern, upstanding working class, Sunday chapel God-fearing man that had lost something from his engagement with death. Then as I passed in the silent corridor, asking softly, he moves so I may pass. The clock ceases from ticking. There was no one to tend its needs, no old frail fingers to turn the brass key that ensured its immaculate time. Here was a smell of age with old oak worn case, tarnished from size reflecting some perpetual defeat. With the box lifted high onto shoulders, I turned to look at the bottom step. I could see Grampy sitting, thumbing through his pictures, muttering away under his breath for his fallen comrades. Split blood, and his frail body, no longer from a different age, but from an age of difference.
From the past, he knew it